jumping on. Let me get this all. Okay, so today, sorry, just trying to get this. So today we have our 2022-2023 CDBG, so Community Development Block Grant, and CDBG CV, which we will talk about, which is COVID related, and Homeless Prevention and Rapid Rehousing Application Workshop. I'm Christine Fales. I'm a housing analyst with the City of Roseville, and I administer our CDBG grant. We also have with us today Suzanne Aprell, who will be presenting on the homeless prevention and rapid rehousing. Suzanne, I don't know if you want to say.
Yes, so good to see so many familiar faces. Yeah, Suzanne here, housing analyst with Roseville Housing, and I'm excited for both of these programs.
Alrighty, so I will be turning off my camera during the presentation, and we're just going to get started here now. Okay. So, everyone should be muted. If you have not muted yourself, please do so. So we don't have any distractions. And if you have any questions, you can use the raise your hand function. I try to take a little screenshot of what the raise your hand looks like on my screen. If anyone has any questions about that, you can unmute yourself and ask. Or if you have any questions, you can use the chat function if you would like to type your question. And Trisha, our housing manager, is on here, and she'll be monitoring raised hands and the chat throughout the presentation. We will also take a couple moments where we'll pause for any questions, and we will get started on to the next. All right, so here's just a quick overview of our agenda for today. We're just going to be going through the CDBG basics and then talk about some of our goals for the CDBG program. We'll take a moment to talk through community needs, if anyone has anything to share at that point. Then we'll do a little overview of our CDBG CV funds. Then Suzanne will discuss the homeless prevention and rapid rehousing funds. We'll go through the application process and requirements, a little overview of our program year schedule. And then lastly, if anyone is unfamiliar with Zoom grants and would like to stay on and go through a little tutorial for that, I'm happy to do that at the end for you. If everyone else, if those of you have already used Zoom grants and you don't need that, don't feel obligated to stay for that. So just a little overview about the Community Development Block Grant. So this is a federal program that's administered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The purpose of the program is to reduce poverty and its effects and develop viable communities by providing decent, safe, and sanitary housing, providing a suitable living environment, expanding economic opportunities. The program promotes affordable housing and community development programs for low-income residents. So who is eligible to apply? Those eligible to apply include city departments, nonprofit organizations, governmental agencies that are independent of the City of Roseville, and for-profit entities that are authorized under federal code. Those who are awarded funds are then become known as subrecipients. When I refer to subrecipients, that's what I'm referring to. And so then we're just going to go through the national objectives of the CDBG program. So all programs that receive CDBG funding must meet one of the HUD national objectives. The national objectives of the grant are to benefit low to moderate income persons and/or households, aid in the prevention or elimination of slum and blight, and or meet an urgent community need that threatens the health or welfare of residents. This last objective is rarely used and is generally associated with disasters. Here, we're just going to talk about how CDBG funds can be used, or some of the ways at least. So first, each activity must meet one of the national objectives that I just discussed in the previous slide. Funds must serve low to moderate income residents. So residents served must have a household income that is equal to or less than 80% of the area's household median income for that household size. There are some groups that are presumed by HUD to be made up of principally low to moderate income persons. This includes abused children, elderly persons, battered spouses, homeless persons, adults meeting the Bureau of Census definition of severely disabled persons, illiterate adults, persons living with AIDS, and migrant farm workers. And then I just gave an example here. The income limit for a 4-person household as of June 2021 is $72,500. So what activities are eligible for CDBG funding? So CDBG funds may be used for activities which include, but are not limited to, acquisition of real property, relocation and demolition, rehabilitation of residential and non-residential structures, construction of public facilities and improvements such as water and sewer facilities, streets, neighborhood centers, and the conversion of school buildings for eligible purposes, public services, activities related to energy conservation and renewable energy resources, provision of assistance to profit-motivated businesses to carry out economic development and job creation or retention activities. Other activities may be eligible, and feel free to contact program staff if you have any questions about your program specifically. Furthermore, eligible or allowable costs under the CDBG program must be directly related to the provision of services. So here are some examples of public service activities. So personnel, staff, salary and benefits, the salaries must be only for persons involved in direct client services. Also, public service funding cannot be used for administrative costs. For office facility rental or lease costs, materials and supplies, communications, and travel or mileage. At least 51% of program beneficiaries must be low or moderate income for public service activities. Then there's our other category, which we use every once in a while for public facility or capital improvement projects. So this includes activities such as property acquisition or rehabilitation, construction costs, or architecture engineering for these projects. These public facilities projects must guarantee at least 51% low and moderate income benefit. Then here's just a little review of what costs are not eligible under CDBG. Generally, the following types of activities are ineligible. So most activities that do not serve primarily low and moderate income individuals or households, programs or services that promote religion, political activities, marketing, incentives, or fundraising, payment of debt or expenses incurred prior to the agreement date, which would be July 1, 2022, entertainment, furnishings, or personal property, equipment purchase, which that has some exceptions, and construction of new housing, that also has some exceptions. Was there a question? So then I just wanted to give you some examples of current programs that are receiving CDBG funding, and these would be considered public service activities. So we have a program that's providing temporary rent and utility assistance, one that works with a family mental wellness program, We have a Meals on Wheels program that we fund. We have the Bags Food Home Delivery program, a Victims Services program, Emergency Shelter and Supportive Services program, mental health clinician, and we have a provider that provides fair housing services. So to utilize CDBG funds for a public service category, the service must be either a new service or an expansion of an existing service. So for example, either serving more people or providing additional services than what you already do. And oops, sorry about that. And public service activities are limited to 15,000 per activity. So we will talk about that more in a couple of slides. Then I just wanted to give some examples of recent projects that received CDBG funding, which would be public, and these are public facility activities. So there's a few construction projects that we completed recently. So one, we brought a bathroom and shower facility at a local homeless shelter up to ADA compliance and health and code standards. We completed an addition of a community kitchen for families at an emergency shelter. We provided home repairs to a permanent supportive housing facility, and we installed a solar system to reduce cost of utilities for residents at that facility. And then this slide just talks about some of the requirements for CDBG subrecipients. So we have quarterly reporting that's due in Zoom grants where you will complete your application. And then invoices are submitted on a quarterly basis, also in Zoom grants. And so the subrecipients must track eligibility of program recipients. So reports will require income and household characteristics of the CDBG beneficiaries. These reports are required on a quarterly basis, as I said, and all costs must be documented and will be provided as backup to invoices. Invoices are submitted through Zoom grants as well. Please note that all costs are paid on a reimbursement basis for the CDBG program. And additionally, reimbursement requests cannot be paid until the associated quarterly report is submitted and has been reviewed and approved. Funds from CDBG must only be used for persons residing within the city of Roseville limits. We cannot provide funding for the unincorporated areas of Roseville. Additionally, all organizations applying for funding must have a non-discriminatory policy for membership and access to services. All organizations must have a DUNS number, D-U-N-S number. So if there's any questions on how to attain a DUNS number, please let me know and I can provide you assistance with that. And then if you have a construction project, for example, there are various procurement procedures depending on your activity or depending on your project. So for example, any project over $100,000 requires sealed bids. We also utilize a consultant who will be involved in the construction projects and will assist with the labor compliance side of these sorts of projects. And lastly, these procedures vary by each particular project. So this would be discussed further on an individual basis if you're awarded funds. If you have any questions, if you have something you want to apply for, please let me know. Now we are just going to review the CDBG Consolidated Plan goals. So the CDBG Consolidated Plan is a plan that's designed to help states and local jurisdictions to assess their affordable housing and community development needs and market conditions and to make data-driven, place-based investment decisions. As a grantee of CDBG funds, the city is obligated to develop a 5-year consolidated plan that analyzes the needs of low-income residents and neighborhoods, identifies available resources, outlines strategies to address concerns, and sets goals for the plan period. The most recent consolidated plan was adopted in 2020. Then the consolidated plan is carried out through annual action plans, which we will be working on the upcoming annual action plan once we get the applications and review who will be receiving funding. So the annual action plan provides a concise summary of the actions, activities, and specific federal and non-federal resources that will be used each year to address the priority needs and specific goals identified by the consolidated plan. Activities that are awarded CDBG funds during this current consolidated plan cycle must be related to one of these goals, which we will talk about in the next couple of slides. And there are 8 goals that were defined in the creation of the 2020 to 2025 consolidated plan. Here are the first 3 goals. We have addressing homelessness was our first goal, which is addressing the needs of persons experiencing homelessness in Roseville and providing assistance to persons at risk of homelessness. Number 2 is the development of affordable rental housing. So this includes the rehabilitation and development of rental housing affordable to very low and low income households. Rehabilitation of affordable rental housing. So this is the rehabilitation of rental housing to maintain the stock of housing affordable to very low and low income households. Here are the next couple of goals. So the provision of services for low income persons. So this is the provision of services needed for low income seniors, youth, victims of domestic violence or sexual assault, and persons with disabilities. Providing fair housing services. So this goal is to promote access to fair housing information and educate tenants and landlords regarding rights and responsibilities under federal and state fair housing law. Number 6 goal was rehabilitation of owner-occupied housing, which we administer an owner-occupied housing rehabilitation program for this purpose. We have goal number 7, which is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. So this, we do have a separate allocation of funding for this purpose for specific to COVID, and it's called CDBG CV funding. All activities receiving this funding are must be directly related to COVID and must be used to prevent, prepare for, or respond to COVID-19. And then our last goal in the consolidated plan is public facilities and improvements. So funding for public facilities and improvements and qualified low-income census tracts and removal architectural barriers projects. So those are our 8 main goals in the consolidated plan through the year 2025. And the top of those 8 goals that we just discussed, 3 of them are considered high priority needs. So the priority was assigned based on the level of need demonstrated by the data collected in the market analysis and needs assessment on the development of the con plan. And we also took into account the citizen participation process and the availability of resources to address these needs. Based on these components, out of those 8 goals, the highest priority needs were determined to be affordable housing, addressing homelessness, as well as preventing, preparing for, and responding to COVID. So as for the final goal of responding to COVID, this was the analysis and development of the con plan was conducted before COVID-19 virus was widespread. So this was added as a 3rd high priority need. So I just wanted to pause for a moment to give people a chance to talk if you would like. We were just wanted to open it up to see what you all as service providers see as current high priority needs. And this would help us in the development of our upcoming annual action plan. If you have anything you would like to share regarding what you think is, high priority needs for the city of Roseville for this year, please feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat if you would like to share. And if there's something that you want to think about and then share with me later, feel free to email me or contact me directly, and then that can be taken into account for our annual action plan development. So if there's anyone that has anything they would like to share, please feel free.
I don't see anything in the chat right now, Christine.
Okay, thank you, Tricia. All right, well, I'll let you guys think about it. If you have anything you want to share, in a little bit, or if you want to contact me directly, please feel free, and we will continue on for now. Thank you. And then just wanted to give a little overview of what our estimated funding is for this upcoming grant year. So we have our grant estimated based on prior year funding. So we're estimating it to be around 700,000. But we also have additional prior year program funds that will be available to expend. This will be calculated and determined as the new program year approaches. But to give you a breakdown of it, of the total grant the city receives, 20% goes towards the administration of the grant, and 20% is the maximum allowed for administration costs. Then as for, let's see, public services. So the amount of CDBG funds used for public services shall not exceed 15% of the total grant awarded to the city. So that's a standard set by HUD. So at estimating, 700,000, that means that we have about $105,000 that can go towards the public service activities. And each, as I previously mentioned, I believe each public service activity is limited to $15,000 max per program. So if you're applying for, a public service category activity, then you would be limited to that $15,000 max. And then lastly, the remaining funding after we take out the 20% for admin and the 15% for public services, the remaining can go towards improvements, rehabilitation of homes for low-income homeowners, and public facility costs. So that right there is around $455,000. And also please note that the allocations of public service related activities must be expended by the end of the program year, which is June 30, 2023. And we're just going to go into a quick overview of the CARES Act funding, which is what I was referring to as CDBG CV funding. So the city also has around $250,000 in CDBG CV funds available to receive applications. And that is a separate application in Zoom Grants, but if you log into the city's page, you should be able to see that pop up as well. So the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act, is funding for the CDBG program that must be used specifically to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. So the CDBG CV grant is subject to the rules and regulations of the annual CDBG program grants. So duplication of benefits is not allowed. So with something that has come up from HUD that they've cracked down on the CDBG CV funds specifically is that about duplication of benefits. So that, or DOB. So a DOB would occur when a person, household, business, government, or other entity received financial assistance from multiple sources for the same purpose, and the total assistance received for that purpose is more than the total need. So we want to make sure that, that organizations aren't duplicating who is being served with the CARES Act funding. At least 70% of every grant must be expended for activities that benefit low and moderate income persons by providing housing, permanent job, or public service, or access to new or significantly improved infrastructure. The remaining 30% may be used to eliminate slum or blighted conditions or to address an urgent need for which the grantee certifies it has no other funding. And activities must benefit residents within the jurisdiction of the grantee. So within the city limits of Roseville. also, these programs for CV funding must also meet a national objective that was discussed earlier. Here are some types of activities eligible for CV funding. And again, all these activities must be directly related to preventing, preparing for, and responding to COVID. Just wanted to give an overview too so far of what we've used the CDBG CV funding that we've received. We have provided some funding towards an emergency rental assistance program. We've used some of the funds towards a fair housing services provider, towards supporting Project Room Key with the county, towards an after-school care program for homeless students. We also ran a small business loan program to support local business owners who were suffering due to COVID, and also we also helped fund a shelter-in-place program for homeless individuals at the height of the pandemic. I just want to take a quick pause for any questions that might have come up before we move on to Suzanne's portion.
We did have a couple of comments and one question, so I can read it real quick. Louise Arquilla stated that she thinks the current assessment is still valid given COVID and high rent, making housing unaffordable to lower income populations. And she also stated that already vulnerable people are being affected on a personal and household level. Victimization is increasing with pandemic and financial stressors. So I believe she was talking about the con plan, stating that the current assessment was still valid. And then Jill Fox asked a question about construction projects. She asked if there is a maximum amount for construction projects.
Oh, that's a good question, Jill. Thank you. No, there's not a maximum. So if you have a construction project and, if we have the available funding, I would say the best bet is to apply for as much as you think you need, and then you can kind of see what we have and what applications we get and what we can do. Yes, no problem. All right. Any other questions at this time, or should we move on to Susie?
Oh, there's one more question that just popped up. Audrey wants to know, what is the average grant amount?
Okay, and Audrey, are you referring to when a program applies, what the average they would receive is, if you want to clarify?
I don't see anything popping. Oh yeah, she's wondering what's the average that's received.
It would depend on your program. So as I mentioned, we have that cap of public service activities, and a lot of the activities that I mentioned, like our victim services program that Stand Up Plaza runs, or St. Vincent de Paul's Bags home delivery program, they're all subject to $15,000 max for those types of grants. The grants that would receive likely more funding just because there's no cap on it would be the public facility activities. Like if you have a construction type of activity, then definitely if we have the funding, we're able to provide more. It's just that $15,000 cap for those public service activities is there. So $15,000 is the max for those types of activities. If you have any other questions, let me know. No problem.
And Christine, on those types of projects, of course, it would just depend on what the bids came in at, right? But sometimes you see smaller projects at 25 or 35,000, and larger projects at even over 100, right?
Yes, absolutely. So an example was St. Vincent de Paul a few years ago. We helped install a walk-in freezer for their facility. And that was, I think, Dr. Tom, it was like $12,000 grant or so, I believe. So there's, that was definitely a smaller project. And then we've had, the VOA Home Start, that was definitely a larger project where we redid their community kitchen, ranging a little over $100,000 grant. they spent less than that, but yeah, they got over $100,000. All right. Well, if that's it for now, I think that we will continue on to homeless prevention and rapid rehousing.
Yes, thank you, Christine. Yeah, so Suzanne here with Housing Division. We'll dive right into the homeless prevention and rapid rehousing program that we have here. Started in 2017 and has changed just a little bit over the years based on our funding. And so we'll just dive right into that. The activities that can be covered with homeless prevention rapid rehousing may include assisting residents who are experiencing homelessness or who are at risk of homelessness. So this would include, but not be limited to, the providing rapid rehousing, rental assistance, supportive like case management services that allow people to obtain and keep their housing, and the operating and capital costs for navigation centers and emergency shelters. Although you'll use the same application process as CDBG, a separate application is required for homeless prevention rapid rehousing funds. So we're doing our presentation together and the notice of funding came out together. The application will also be on Zoom grants, just like CDBG's, but they are two separate applications in there. And the funds for homeless prevention rapid rehousing must be used to provide services within city limits of Roseville and Rockland. So that's one big difference with homeless prevention rapid rehousing. We have both Roseville and Rockland funds. And the 2022 homeless prevention rapid rehousing funding sources include low and moderate income funds. So we have $250,000. And new as of just this last year, we have funding from the state's Permanent Local Housing Allocation Program, or PLHA. So Roseville received PLHA funds of $462,000. And then we also have permission to administer City of Rockland's PLHA allocation. So there's a maximum of $198,000 of funding that can be spent in Rockland this upcoming funding cycle. And with new funding comes new requirements. In order to receive PLHA funding, applicants must serve households, and this is new, earning no more than 30% of area median income. This has been 60% in the past of AMI, so this is a pretty significant difference. But yeah, no more than 30% of AMI. And then, of course, same as last year, assistance must be provided consistent with Housing First practices. These are described in 25 CCR section 8409, and I can provide that to you if you need it. But yeah, Housing First principles and serving folks that are at or below 30% AMI for the permanent local housing allocation funds. Applicants whose programs don't comply with Housing First practices will still be eligible for some of the funding. It just won't be provided through PLHA. It'll be provided through the low mod source. In years past, homeless prevention rapid rehousing, we started that in 2017, and that funding cycle was based on a calendar year. Now that we've changed over to PLHA, and because funding wasn't typically in your hands until late spring, we shifted both funding and reporting to the fiscal year. So now this mirrors the city and it mirrors CDBG funding cycles, hopefully to be a lighter administrative burden on you all. So future years, we will continue on the regular fiscal cycle. So that will be July 1 through July 30th. And with reporting being twice a year once due at the end of July and once due at the end of January. All right, let's dive into application requirements. And I think Christine talked a little bit about this, but we'll dive in a little bit more. There are a couple of requirements that are necessary to input into both the CDBG and the homeless prevention rapid rehousing applications. We'll need your tax ID number and your DUNS number. If you have questions, again, if you have questions on getting a DUNS number, please contact me or Christine. We'll put our contact in at the end of the slides here. And all applications will be reviewed and ranked based on the following criteria. So for CDBG, we're definitely going to be looking at the eligibility and national objective, needs and justification, project and activity readiness, because there is a timeline on spending the money. We'll look at cost and reasonableness, effectiveness, management and implementation capacity of the subrecipients. We'll look at experience and knowledge, past performance, community engagement and collaboration, and HMIS, or Homeless Management Information System, and the coordinated entry, matching funding or leverage that you can offer, and completeness. And then as far as the program year schedule, you can see in front of you, deadline for applications is February 4th. And then we'll take a few weeks to review and get approval on our recommendations. They'll go to council on May 4th. May 4th, you, your staff, your clients, you're welcome to attend the May 4th City Council meeting at 6 p.m. Hopefully in support of the CDBG and homeless prevention rapid rehousing programs, but that's when the awards would be presented to them and ideally approved. And then of course the funding year begins July 1 and goes through June 30th. And we talked about applications being due by February 4th. For those that are familiar with Zoom grants, I believe this is the same as last year. When we say end of day, we mean midnight. So the program will cut off or close the applications at midnight on Friday, February 4th. And I don't think we had a slide for questions, but yeah, definitely if we have a few minutes, and it looks like we do, maybe we can take questions similar to how we did for CDBG, and then we'll dive into Zoom grants, the specifics.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions in the chat real quick, and we're going to have to do some math. Louise Arquilla wants to know the approximate percentage of the split between Roseville and Rockland for the PLHA program. And I think maybe your slide had the percentages on it with that pie chart.
Maybe I'll go. Yeah, it's around 20/80 or 25/75.
Yeah, with
there.
And the low mod. Yeah, okay. So, and then, oh, she also wants to know what is the split between the 30% and the 60%. So yeah, it's basically this right here answers your question, because 22% of it is the Rockland PLHA, 27% is the low mod. So the low mod is the one that can go up above that 30%. 27% of the funds can go above 60% AMI.
Does that answer your question, Louise? And we can talk through it more later if we need to. Oh, she's got it. Thank you. Good question. Anything else on either program, homeless prevention rapid rehousing, or questions on application or CDBG?
This is Gary McDonald with Lighthouse. I apologize, I was a little bit late. My doctor's appointment ran really late. So I was wondering if this was taped so that I could review the first part later.
Yes, Gary, it is. I can, we're gonna get it put into a YouTube link and then I can send that to you.
I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, I think we will talk about Zoom grants for a moment, just a couple little things, and then if anyone needs to stay on for a deeper dive into that, you are welcome to. So these were just a couple of quick tips that Louise mentioned last year. She brought up and thought I would share them this year. So something to think about if you're in Zoom grants and you, it does autosave, but in order to get it to autosave, you should click outside the box where you're typing. So I just, if I'm ever in there, I just try to click every once in a while outside the box so that you don't lose what you're doing. Also, if it's easier for you to work in Microsoft Word and paste it into Zoom grants, just go ahead and select paste as plain text when you paste it. Otherwise, it gets kind of, I think that some of the characters don't transfer over well. And another thing is that multiple people can be working on the same application at the same time, but they just can't, just have to be sure you're not in the exact same question at the exact same time. And if you, I can send this link out to anyone that needs it, but if you need the direct link to the city's Zoom grants, which would have all of our applications on there, this is the link right up here. If you have any content or eligibility questions, oh, I don't have Suzanne's contact. For CDBG, ask me. And then as for Suzanne, I can add her. Oh no, here you are. Sorry. Let me go back. Running back really fast. If there's any Zoom grants issues that you're having, technical issues, the Zoom Grants University, when you log in there, they are very helpful. There's a lot of questions that are answered on their frequently asked questions page, or you can email them and they're very responsive. Again, if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand or type in the chat now. And here you will see Suzanne and my email and phone number. And is there anyone, I guess I can see if there's anyone that needs a little Zoom grants tutorial or extra info, if anyone wants to stay on for that, or if everyone's.
We do have a couple of requests in the chat from a few different people that are asking for the slide presentation to be emailed out.
Oh yeah, I can do that.
And then Suzanne mentioned that she wanted to clarify, in case she missed it, that the homeless prevention and rapid rehousing minimum application is $25,000 at least. Yeah.
Yes. Great. And then Trisha, do you have the names of the people that want the want me to send them the slides, I guess, unless if there's anyone else, maybe just put your name in the chat and then we can send that out to you.
Yeah, so far we just have 2 people that are requesting it. So
Okay.
If anyone else wants it, I guess if anyone else wants it, they can always email you directly and then you can email them back.
Yes, that works too. Okay, I just saw a couple more pop up. Okay.
And then, yes. And then Laura Webster with the City of Rockland is stating that the actual split on the permanent local housing allocation, Rockland versus Roseville, it looks like it's 30% for Rockland and 70% for Roseville, excluding the low mod. And a lot of people are requesting the slides, so it might just be easier to send them out to everybody.
Yeah, maybe I will. I have everyone on the list, so that works. Yeah.
Yes, and I do have a list of everybody that attended today.
Okay, thank you. Great. is there anyone that needs the Zoom grants tutorial, or I can send that out also? It's another PowerPoint. Maybe I'll just include that. And then if you guys want to take a look at that, that would work. Okay, perfect. Does anyone want to stay on a few minutes to talk about Zoom grants, or you guys all good? Nope. Okay, that works. All right, well, if that's everything, you know where to contact us if you guys have any questions. And with that, thank you everybody for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.